Tons of human remains were found sealed in the walls of a Roman fort. In Ecuador, 2 skeletons were found wearing helmets made from other human skulls. And on a remote island in Scotland, archaeologists found mummified bodies under floors, stitched together from parts of different people. These are disturbing things found in abandoned ancient villages. Reculver is this small ruin sitting right on the edge of the English coast. Looks peaceful enough, but in the late 60s, archaeologist Brian Phillip was digging around the remains of an old Roman fort there and found something pretty grim. Inside the actual walls and under the floors of the buildings, they found the skeletons of at least 10 infants. Not in a graveyard, they were inside the structure. Philip said the whole thing was very unusual, which you don't really need to be an archaeologist to piece together. The bodies were placed in specific spots that lined up with Roman-era building rituals. There's this old belief that you could protect a new building by burying a person under it or in the walls. Specifically, they'd use young people. Is it possible they were just burying stillborns? I mean, when you find 10 sealed up into the foundations of the forts, that starts to sound pretty unlikely. Unsurprisingly, the place is said to be haunted. The story goes that if you walk around the ruins at night, you'll hear crying. Whether you believe that part or not, the truth is definitely creepy enough on its own. In 2019, at a burial site in Salango, Ecuador, dated to around 100 BCE, archaeologists found 2 infants buried wearing helmets made out of human skulls. The skulls had been hollowed out and placed right over the infants' heads like a shell, with their faces staring out from inside, kind of like Cubone from Pokemon. One of the researchers, Sarah Dwankst, from UNC Charlotte, said, "This has literally not been seen before. To our knowledge, we think this is a totally novel burial practice." So between the 2 layers of skull in one of the burials, the team found a small seashell and a tiny hand bone, both placed there intentionally. Figurines were also nearby, which might have been used to help guide or protect their souls. So the reason for all this is still a mystery, but the researcher also said she suspects the helmets were meant as protection, adding, "We think we know a lot about the past, and then we have discoveries like this." At first glance, Clad Hallen looks like the pretty standard remnants of an ancient village on an island off the coast of Scotland, but what archaeologists found under the floorboards of these Bronze Age homes was pretty eerie. They dug up human skeletons that had clearly been placed there on purpose. So, alright, people bury their dead. Big deal. But the creepy part is how well preserved they were. These were mummified bodies, which seemed to make no sense at all in the Scottish climate. Turns out, though, these people had been buried in peat bogs for months, maybe even up to a year, and then dug back up and reburied inside the homes. Here's another eerie part about this. When researchers ran DNA tests, they found that the skeletons weren't even from single individuals. They were weird Frankenstein-like creations. One male mummy had a torso from one person, a jaw from another, and the top of the head was from someone else entirely. That is very weird. In southern Egypt, at a cemetery called Daima, archaeologists found the remains of a teenage girl who was buried in a very strange way. Her left arm had been completely cut off, then placed right back beside her body in a strange tight bend, over 90 degrees, so it kind of mirrored the position of her right arm. Whoever buried her went out of their way to make her look whole again, but with a kind of eerie, unnatural symmetry. What makes it even stranger is how her whole body was positioned. She was aligned with the setting sun on the winter solstice, and her coffin was pointing straight at Sirius, the brightest star in the sky, while Sirius is connected with the goddess Isis, and the researchers think this might be one of the earliest physical signs of the Osiris myth, the one where Isis gathers the scattered pieces of Osiris's body to bring him back from the dead. According to the team behind the study, when the state emerged, it did not create religion from scratch. It absorbed long-standing practices and reworked them into royal narratives. End quote. So the researchers aren't saying this girl was buried because of the Osiris myth, but that this kind of ritual with dismemberment and star alignments may have already existed and eventually shaped stories like that myth. Deep in Connecticut's dark entry forest is Dudleytown, which isn't actually a town. It's a small 18th century settlement. According to the legend, the Dudley family who settled there in the 1700s brought a curse with them. Supposedly, they were related to a nobleman in England who was executed. Everyone connected to him started dying weird, tragic deaths. People in Dudleytown went insane, vanished into the woods, or took their own lives. That's the story anyway. Ghost hunters love the place. People who've snuck into the ruins say there's this heavy, dead silence to it. Some say they see figures in the trees or feel someone brush past them when no one is there. Ed and Lorraine Warren, the famous paranormal investigators, even called the area demonically possessed. But historians think most of the curse stories were made up in the 20th century. The real reason Dudleytown was abandoned, just crappy farmland. Still, the place has such a bad rep that it's now private property and police will come after you if you try to sneak in. Back in 1971, two boys in the English town of Hexham named Colin and Leslie Robson dug up a pair of weird stone heads in their backyard. Right after that, things in the house got weird. Bottles flew off shelves, doors would slam on their own, and the stone heads would reportedly be found in different positions when no one had been there in the room. And next door, a kid had his hair yanked by some invisible hand, and his mom said she saw a half-man, half-goat-like creature walking out of their house afterwards. Eventually, the heads were sent to a Celtic folklore expert named Anne Ross, who took them home to study. And things just got weirder from there. She claimed she woke up one night to a cold, heavy presence in the room and saw a giant beast shaped like a wolf walking down her hallway. As soon as she got rid of the heads, the weirdness stopped. She believed they might be tied to old Celtic magic, where human heads were seen as powerful symbols of the soul. Nobody knows exactly where the heads came from or how old they are, and nobody knows where they went. They disappeared not long after changing hands one last time, and that person vanished. To this day, no one's seen them again. Deep inside a cave in the Judean hills near Jerusalem, archaeologists found one of the most spooktacular burial sites I've ever heard of. It was a necromancer's cave. There were human skulls arranged around oil lamps, swords and daggers were placed nearby like offerings, and those oil lamps, there were about 120 of them stuffed into crevices near the skulls. All of this was buried deep underground with no natural light. The cave's name is Teomim, and it's been studied for years. A team from Hebrew University and Bar Ilan University said the objects were probably used in necromancy, rituals to contact the dead and summon spirits. In fact, historical Jewish texts like the Mishnah talk about caves being used to summon the dead, and this exact region was known in ancient times for sorcery and creepy underground rituals. In Ontario, Canada, archaeologists found a human skull with 7 perfect holes punched through the top, and it wasn't from an injury. This had been done on purpose. It looked like a tally, and according to researchers, that's probably exactly what it was. The skull came from the Ratcliffe site, a 16th century Huron village north of Toronto. The best theory is that the person who owned it had used it as a war trophy. Each hole marked an enemy killed in battle. This kind of thing wasn't totally unheard of in the area, but the Ratcliffe skull is one of the clearest examples. It was left above ground, found along with a bunch of broken tools and pottery in what used to be someone's home. About 20 kilometers outside Jaisalmer in Rajasthan, India, is Kaldara, a village abandoned around 200 years ago. The story goes that it's cursed. Originally founded in the 13th century, it was around until the early 1800s. Legend goes Salim Singh, the local minister of the ruling kingdom, started demanding an impossible tax and allegedly tried to force the village chief's daughter into marriage. Singh had power, he controlled taxes, land, he had royal backing, so when he threatened to raise taxes so high the villagers would starve, it was not just talk. But rather than let him take the girl and destroy the village with taxes, everyone in Kaldara and 83 nearby villages just left in a single night. No one knows where they went, but before leaving, they cursed the place so that no one could ever live there again. Locals say you can still hear ghostly footsteps and whispers, or catch glimpses of shadowy entities lurking in the shadows. In 2023, construction workers laying a pipeline in Delbrück, Germany, accidentally came across the remains of a Roman-era village that's been buried for over 1,600 years. The team from the Westphalia Lippe Regional Association jumped on it. What they found was kinda nuts. Over 750 artifacts were scattered across the site. They found preserved wood, a chunk of leather, and here's something you don't hear about a lot in finds like this: an insect wing shouldn't survive a few years, let alone over 1,000. That's how well preserved this place was. They also found a cremation grave with burnt bone, pit houses with charred beams, and a Roman military belt buckle. All that said, I've been your host James, so I'll catch you, yes you specifically, in the next video.